Hello, amazing friends. Happy Wednesday. Happy August. Hope everyone's having an amazing week. We have decided, I'm sorry, I think this is our connection. So, we have decided to think and how we can add value to all of you. And one of the biggest thing in medical world is sorry, I think the internet connections keep going in and out. But one of the biggest thing is how you can combine medical real estate and your space with a world-class design. Today I wanted to have one of the really awesome and an expert agent that his name is Nick from CARR, CARR Real Estate, medical healthcare real estate company. I wanted to invite him, and I invited him to join me to looking at from two different perspectives of like real estate, how you can find your best place, and especially right now that the world is changing on the hourly, I would say, basis, and how you can dance between finding the right space, being in the right location, and how you can combine that to a world-class design. So I'm waiting for him to join. Nick is, he was previously in part of like a dental group, and he did a lot of dental and medical rep kind of joining from a medical world into the real estate part. So here's we go. I think Nick is here. Let me we're waiting for him to join. I'm excited for this call because this is gonna hi Nick.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. How are you?
Excellent. Happy Wednesday.
Absolutely. Happy Wednesday. I don't know about you guys. Over here on the East Coast, we had like a hurricane yesterday. So
I know,
I'm
I know.
I'm happy we did this today because yesterday would have been a problem in terms of connections.
My internet it was a little bit unstable, but I think I'm good right now. But everything's good from your side?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. Awesome. So I was just telling everyone that the intention behind this going Instagram live it's about how we can add value to our audiences, our followers, our friends, that how they can dance between the real estate and design, because if we are in such an unknown and unpredictable world, but we can make the best out of this. If we have clarity, if we have the knowledge, if we know who we surround ourselves with, then we can really create a world-class medical space that is the right location, is the right square footage, and is profitable, and also like bringing and tying their branding through their design to their space. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit, and then we can dive in deep into our conversation.
Sure. Well, first things first, thank you for having me. I definitely appreciate that. It's very kind to have the invitation. So I guess I'll start with a little bit about myself. And I did catch a little bit you had mentioned. So prior to joining CARR, I worked for a company called Henry Schein, which does medical and dental sales. And I worked in the dental division. So I had a list of 200 clients, dentists that I called on a 2-week call cycle. I spent about 2 years with Henry Schein, and through my time with Henry Schein, I had discovered CARR Healthcare Realty and had actually introduced the CARR agent in the local market that I was operating in at the time to a few of my doctors, and I got to see the process up close and personal and how they help doctors save time and money. And so I was really on board with it, and was fortunate enough to get an opportunity to join the company. So happy to be here. I personally, I joined CARR in February, and I live in northern New Jersey. So I represent northern New Jersey, New York City. I also represent the New York suburbs, Long Island, Westchester County, Rockland County, New York. So I'm definitely happy to be here. A little bit about CARR. So CARR started in 2009 and operated within the Denver metro area exclusively for about 5 years. and then went national in 2014. So now we've got over 100 agents across the country, and we're operating in about 44 states and all the major metropolitan areas.
That's awesome. So Nick, I'm going to dive into it. So for our new viewers, I'm Mitra Silva. I'm the founder and CEO of Simour Design. And today we wanted kind of joint venture and have this like really brainstorming and kind of bringing a lot of values as far as the real estate and design. So one of my biggest thing in business and with our clients and the vision and the mission of what we do at Simour is about transforming not just your just opening a practice, but actually transforming your life and your business through interior design.
Right.
Your patient experience, right? So if it's transformational in the way that you keep like stepping towards success, is healing, is elevating. So that's one of our biggest vision and mission in the company. Yeah. And we're super, I would say, grateful and fortunate to working with the like-minded clients. So for the ones that they're on right now and they listening to us, I wanted to kind of help them to understand what kind of the space would be the best for them, especially right now that a lot of changes happening, the square footage, the location. Just give us a little bit of like what is that fundamental of having the right space, and then I can like talk, like collaborate with you as far as the design part.
Sure, absolutely. So that question, it's going to somewhat depend on what healthcare vertical we're talking about. So
the specialty, basically.
Exactly. So it could depend upon what we're talking about and which specialty we're talking about and what healthcare vertical we're talking about. But one of the things that we do in our process with CARR and how we help determine and find that, because in the end it's going to come down to the specific doctor and what they're looking to achieve. So what our process is from the real estate and space finding standpoint is we're going to have a consultation with the doctor. We're going to sit down. We're going to talk about what area that they're looking to locate in. And if they're unsure of what area they want to locate in, we help them through that process. We can help them with demographics, traffics, and we can help them through that process in terms of honing in and where exactly they would want to be.
So what would be the best traffic, and like, can you give us a little bit of those information? What would be the best traffic? What would be the best let's just get an example of a regular medical office. It can be a GI doctor, it can be a plastic surgeon, it can be a med spa. I know dental has a more very specific kind of navigating through as far as the operatories, but something that it has more generalized, like what are those elements that they have to look for when you're helping them, as if like you have an example of a clientele.
Sure. So if I were to give an example, and again, this is going to depend upon each scenario. Every transaction is going to be different. But one of the reports that we looked at for a dermatology client that we're looking at right now, they were dating between a couple of towns. And some of the metrics that we looked for in terms of honing in on what town that doctor wanted to locate in were the per capita income of the area. We were looking for a higher per capita income area, what the population trends are in the area. So for as an example, one of the towns that we were looking at actually saw a decrease in population, whereas the other one is seeing an increase and is actually becoming a boom town. And the reason why is because of its proximity in terms of the shops, a desirable downtown, train line that'll take you to the city. So in any transaction, there's going to be different metrics that we look at, and it's going to be based upon the doctor's specific benchmarks and what they're looking to achieve. But that's just to provide you an example. One of the things that we're working on with the current clients, we were looking at what the income is of the area, what the population growth is of the area, how many of, in this instance, it's a dermatology office, how many other dermatologists are in the area. And in this town in particular, believe it or not, there were no other dermatologists. So in terms of a competition standpoint, there really wasn't much in the area to compete with. And so we take all of that into consideration, and we'll sit down with the doctor, and with that framework in mind, we'll pick 5 or 6 properties to tour. And then after that 5 or 6 properties, we'll sit down with the doctor and we'll ask them to pick their top 2 or 3 that we're going to negotiate upon simultaneously. And the reason we're going to do that is for a few reasons. Any landlord, or whether it's a purchasing or a leasing scenario, if they know they have competition, they're going to have to come to the table with better terms that are more desirable and more favorable for you. That's going to be the biggest reason why that we'll do that. Number 2, we don't want all of their options tied up in one property. You might have a situation where a doctor really likes one property, but for whatever reason, it's no longer available, or there's another tenant that previously swooped in before, so we didn't know it and they got it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the third reason is going to be to make sure that the doctor knows that they vetted all of the potential options that are out there on the market, and they can be 100% confident that they pick the right space and the right location for their office. So, again,
Is there any financial analysis when you're helping your clients? So, do you do any kind of financial analysis to make sure, like, okay, if, like, example, if the doctor who's dermatologist or a plastic surgeon or any other specialty, do you go through, okay, like, what is the budget you're going to put down as far as like monthly basis leasing? I mean, we can talk about purchasing later, but like in general, like, do you do any of those?
Yeah, so that is going to be dependent upon a couple of factors. The first is going to be financing. So first things first, before we actually will tour any properties, we want to first talk to a few lending partners, and we want to determine what they can and cannot achieve. And the reason why is the worst case scenario is we find a property, the doctor loves it, and then it turns out for whatever reason we can't get financing for it. So now I look like a jerk because I took you to a property that you didn't work out for, and then you're heartbroken because you really wanted this space, but it ended up not panning out. So the first thing we're going to do on that front is determine from a lending perspective what the bank's appetite is for lending. Once we have that framework and once we have that in place, a pre-approval, that'll help us a lot in terms of determining what the doctor can and cannot afford. And that's where we can start getting into the numbers in terms of purchasing versus leasing. How big of a space can they afford? What areas can they afford? What type of equipment can they, what's their build out so that they can afford? And that's where we'll go from there. So the first step is always going to be getting approval from a bank.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that's really helpful. So first step while they're looking or they wanted to go through the process of finding the space is that contacting a lender through you and help, get help from that part. Okay, awesome. And then what is that process looks like as far as, let's say, get approved for, like, I don't know, like a certain amount of money, and then how would you go about it, like as far as like helping them to get clarity of what would be the best square footage for them?
So the square footage is going to depend upon how many providers there are and what they're looking to achieve and what their long-term outlook is. So, to give you an example, just because I'm familiar with dental coming from that background, your average dentist, if it's just one dentist and a few hygienists, you're typically looking at anywhere from 1,800 to 2,400 square feet. That would be your standard, and that would get you about 4 or 5 operatories. That's pretty much a standard operating procedure as it pertains to dental. And in terms of square footage, that is applicable to other healthcare providers as well. So that's going to be the first thing that we're going to look at. How many providers are there? What is their current production level? So you might have a situation where this is a second office, or they're associated at a
location, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right, or they might be purchasing a practice that was already up and running. Let's say you have a doctor who's retiring and they're purchasing the practice and they're inheriting a certain number of a book of business. So it's going to depend upon those factors, but we have a framework for each healthcare provider as in terms of what is the average square footage based on the number of providers there are in the office and the production level that you have in the office.
Okay, awesome. And what was your suggestion usually as far as how long they should do the lease for? Like the duration of it? Is it 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years? What are the suggestions that you give to your clients usually?
So the most common lease length that we recommend, and the most common lease length that most healthcare providers choose to go with, is the 10-year lease rate. And the reason why is it's important to understand for any doctors that are on the call, the way commercial real estate properties are valued is from a net operating income standpoint.
Mhm.
So without getting too much into details, essentially what that means is the higher rent rate that a building is getting, the more that you're paying in rent and that your other tenants are paying in rent, the more value that the property has. So if the current owner were to sell the building, it's going to be worth more if you're paying $30 a square foot versus $25 a square foot because that property is bringing in more income. So
Mhm.
as that pertains to a lease scenario now, it's important to keep in mind from the landlord perspective, they want you to have some skin in the game. So if you're doing a 5-year lease, because many doctors say, well, I just want to do a 5-year lease, I don't want to be tied down. The problem is the landlord's not going to be as willing to offer you as favorable terms because you're not giving them as much long-term stability. So something that landlords will offer is called tenant improvement allowance, which is
Mhm.
where the landlord will actually pay and contribute towards you sprucing up the space to your desire and your liking. So let's just randomly picking numbers here. If you're negotiating, we're negotiating on a 10-year lease. The landlord might say, "Hey, I'm going to provide $40 a square foot towards your tenant improvement allowance." In other words, per square foot, they're going to pay $40 towards that space. The build out, depending upon the healthcare vertical, we'll talk about, but an average medical build out might be anywhere, depending on the market, of course, but at least in
Mhm.
this area, anywhere from $120 to $140 a square foot. So with a 10-year lease, that landlord might be saying, "Hey, I'll contribute $40 a square foot towards this space." If you now say, "Well, hey, I only want to do a 5-year lease," now that landlord is not going to offer you that $40
Yeah,
because they're going to spend all of this money
for a
to
shorter amount of time.
right, and you're giving them less of a commitment. And the thing to keep in mind too is when landlords offer deals like that, they might not break even until year 3 or 4 on the deal in terms of the amount of money they're putting up front to get you in the space. So they're not willing to commit. If you're only going to be there for 5 and they're breaking even by year 4, they're not willing to make that deal. Whereas with the 10-year deal, they are willing to make that deal. And one of the things that we'll often say to doctors who say, well, hey, I eventually want to purchase my own real estate is we'll work with them to negotiate. And sometimes landlords are willing to negotiate into the leasing agreement as an option to eventually
To
purchase.
buy.
Well, yeah.
That's awesome. So just tie that to design. So when we onboard our clients, or even before we're going through the qualification and all this, that's one of our questions because the investment of putting the design and construction and going through the entire,
Mm-hmm.
process of if they're staying in a space 3 to 5 years or even 7 years versus 10 years is different. And then
Mm-hmm.
we tell them, some clients are startups. Some of them they've been in the business for 3 to 5 years. Some
Right.
of them longer. Some of them are a second location. But just understanding that it has to make sense for both, like for the landlord and for the tenant,
Right.
which is doctors in this case. So we always go through that process and we ask that question as well, like what is that? How long are you going to stay in the space?
Right.
Because it doesn't make sense if you're spending like $1 million in a 2,000 square feet, for example. We have clients that they spend like we have a clients that for like 1,700 square feet he spent like $1.2 million, and but it wouldn't make sense if he would have stayed only for like 5 years. He had like a 10 years with the option on another 10 years. So that's awesome. So what other elements, especially for right now, I've seen like a lot of our clients or a lot of the prospect that we get, they keep talking about like buying their own space, real estate, because the market, it's really unknown, but it's interesting enough that the loan rate and everything is so low. They can just they want to get to the level that they have their own space. Any feedback, any suggestions, any kind of advice that you can, from the real estate standpoint, give to our doctors that they are thinking and wanting to buy their own space?
Absolutely. Well, number one, that's a good impulse to have. And what we would advise is this: if it's an apples to apples comparison, purchasing is always going to be better than leasing. In other words, if you can get an equally good property, purchasing or leasing, then purchasing is the option. However, what we will caution is this: on the average, and this might vary depending upon what part of the country you're in, but it's about 10 to 1 in terms of what the leasing options are available versus purchasing. So purchasing is definitely a little bit harder to find just in terms of an inventory perspective. The other issue you sometimes run into with purchasing is if there might be a building for sale, but it already has tenants occupying the space, and they're occupying for another 4 or 5 years. But if it's apples to apples and you have the option to purchase, then purchasing is the better option. But we caution in the sense that don't purchase just for the sake of purchasing and it hurts your practice. So what we mean by that is this: if you have, I'm going to use an optometrist as an example. Optometry, 50% of their production comes just from retail sales. If you've got an optometrist and they find a perfect retail location in a very high-end center, perfect visibility, right on a major roadway, it would be the perfect location for a startup practice. And then you find a building for sale and it's on a backcountry road that no one drives by. I'm using an extreme example here just to make the point.
Yeah.
If the option to lease is better for your practice, always do what's best for your practice and your practice's productivity first and foremost. But if you can find the purchasing option that is again apples to apples with the leasing option, then purchasing is the better opportunity. And in terms of commercial real estate prices, generally speaking, they are falling as a result of the coronavirus. So if that opportunity is out there, then absolutely, then doctors are in their mindset is the correct mindset to have, given the current market conditions.
Awesome. Thank you. That was
Yeah.
excellent advice. So when it comes to design, so the way we dance between when our clients are, I would say 30 to 40% of our clients, they come to us and we start a process before if they finalize their space. So the way we dance between the design and like finding or finalizing at this point their dream location
Yeah.
is we always ask that question that is it going to have enough square footage that is going to provide with the growth, right? Because the way we usually design, we calculate 30% growth for the time because they spend a lot of time and money and energy, and we want to make sure it gets a lot about their storage and a lot of like expanding their team, like all of that. We go
Yeah.
through that entire process of like understanding that interior design in the old world, like it's like a traditional world. The the doctor or like the client usually hire an architect and then they bring the contractor and then the designer comes halfway through, select some materials. But the way we do it, which it proves us over and over again with our clients that is a higher level of success rate, is when you have your design as your patient-centered experience, then all the square footage, all the location, like all the budget breakdown and everything else, and your branding will follow that. And that's a unique approach that we have. And I wanted our audience and our followers to get that education between like really like understanding the location and having the right square footage and how you tie it to the design is about having the right team, talking to the people that they're medical expert. We
Yeah.
have at this point we're getting like a lot of correction projects that a lot of people they messed it up, like they weren't in expertise in medical, and this our clients they spend so much time and money and energy, but they still halfway through the process they didn't get what they want. So it was early enough that we were able to help them. But the important part is just like having an intentional path about finding the right team, which is one of them is broker or real estate agent, and then putting the people together or the team together that they're medical experts.
Yeah.
And we see it all the time that when that flow between the team happens, the money that they spend, the time that they spend, it goes very smoothly. I mean, things will come up in construction. You can't sugarcoat it. Things will come up in construction, but I always tell our clients, uh, things will come up, but if you have a right team, they can take care of it like this, because everyone knows what's their next step is, how they can handle and help each other as a team. Um, if that means like finding the right space, like sometimes even the broker or real estate agent that our clients work with, they stay with us for the first phase of the process to make sure everything is right as far as getting the money, the tenant improvement money.
Mhm.
Like if we want to get more like document from the building, so on and so forth, because they want to make sure that our clients has been taken care of all the way through the process of like not just closing the deal, but actually stepping into and making sure they go that extra mile. And I believe that's extremely helpful, especially when it comes to real estate agent and broker, that they're going to help with the process. So I always advise our clients that like, choose people that they are high performance. They want to help you to see you successful, and they're committed and they want to see that outcome and the result from the beginning with you. And when you surround yourself by those type of professionals, then the success is just going to be a no-brainer. You get there and you know what's your step next, one after another, especially like combining design, architecture. It's just so many things happening when they want to open a new practice. Anything else that you want to add to sorry,
I'm sorry, I think I lost
can
you
you
there.
hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so I just want to see if you want to add anything else. I believe we were able to kind of like touch upon it. It's just so much
Oh,
information and it's so many a lot of different elements that we can help, but I feel like just knowing just a little bit of tips, how they go about it, as a opening a new practice, or go about like how to even buy their space. I think that was really helpful. Just want to see if you want to add anything
yeah.
else, otherwise we're just gonna wrap it up.
Yeah, no, I concur with everything that you said. And in terms of the synergies between our companies, they're so crucial in the sense that, we both specialize in the areas that we specialize in, whether it be design and real estate. And it's so crucial that doctors not make the mistake that you alluded to, whereas you mentioned you've got to come in sometimes and clean up older projects that weren't done the right way the first time. And I think the parting message for any doctors who listen to this is, you can't take shortcuts. In the end, when you try to, take the shortcut or the cheaper way out, you end up paying for it on the back end because you didn't do it right the first time. And so that's
And I
where,
want to add something that, sorry,
yeah,
that's exactly what we tell our
yeah,
clients. You're going to spend the money regardless. How wisely you spend it is the
yes.
question. And that comes with having the expertise team that you put together, because
Mhm.
it's a lot of things to digest. Sorry, go back to you.
No, absolutely. No, I completely concur. And, to add a little bit of more meat on that, when it comes to the real estate side, we don't, I always tell our doctors, and they're surprised when we hear, like, they won't ever pay us for what we do. And the reason why is in real estate, we're tenant and buyer only. And so real estate, commercial real estate, like residential, the commissions are already paid out on the seller or the landlord side. So I always tell the doctors, whether you hire us or not, you're never paying us. There's never a fee for what we charge. We can only help you. And I'll often joke around where I'm like, even if I'm not good at what I do, you're still gonna be better off with me than if you had nobody. And that's a joke, of course. I think I'm good at what I do, but and that has a reverberating effect on any deal or transaction, and that affects in terms of their budget when it comes to designing the space that the way they want it designed and getting it done the right way. And I'll give you a quick example of how that works in closing, where, we talk about docs who might be overpaying for their real estate. Let's say you've got a doctor who's currently leasing, And let's say we mentioned earlier a 10-year deal is the most common transaction. Let's say you've got a 3,000 square foot facility, right? And let's say that you're paying $30 a square foot, but the market rate where you are is $25 a square foot. Well, that doesn't sound like that big of a difference, $5 a square foot, but you gotta compound that out. If you're paying $5 a square foot extra, you're paying $90,000 a year instead of $75,000 a year. You're paying a couple extra $100 a month is what that adds up to. Well, I'm sorry, $1,200 a month extra. And then if you compound that out on a 10-year deal, you're paying $150,000 more on that transaction than you should have been. And that's not even factoring in other concepts such as lease escalations, which are meant to account for inflation. So when you factor that in, and then you come across a doctor and they say, well, they try to, cut a corner, or I can't afford this. I can't afford to get it designed the right way by the right professionals who specialize in medical. Well, this has the reverberating effect where if we're able to help doctors and help them to see this concept that we could potentially save them tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars, it has a reverberating effect in terms of A, making the deal happen and making the deal feasible. And two, getting the doctor the space that they need and want and getting it designed the way they want and done the right way by the professionals who specialize in this, which is you guys. So that's where our synergies are, and that's where I'm concurring completely with what you say, where that's just a common mistake that doctors make. And so if they take anything from our discussion today, let it be that. Get it done the right way.
And also like really a successful practice. It's not about just opening a new practice, putting a team together. It must be very intentional from the moment that they want to think of like, okay, I want to open my own practice. What kind of space do I want to get? Where do I want to do it? How do I want to do it? What team I want to put together? It has to be so intentional that at the end, there is no choice but success.
Right.
And that's what we tell our client, that if the success is just a simple formula, but you have to have a right mindset behind it, to looking at the process in a very rely on the expert from the real estate to design. Like even when we open up our network to our clients, like contractor, architect, engineer, we tell them that, like you have to be able to rely on them, that they guide you and trust them to guide you through the path, that at the end, the money that you spend, first of all, is every step of the way is clear. The clarity part is really important. Something that I feel like in the construction world, in design world, in that is like, it's a lot of surprises. That's something that we always, I personally and my team, like we always keep emphasizing on, like you have to be clear every step of the way. Don't take any steps if you don't know what that means. So in the beginning, we draw a map of from the space planning to the square footage to who they have to work with, and kind of like it depends like how involved we are in the project, but like having that clarity, having that trust that they can rely on the experts are very, very main element to their success. Thank you so much, Nick.
Yeah.
That was a really awesome conversation. And do you have anything else to add? Otherwise, we're just gonna,
No, I think we covered it all, and we did it in an efficient amount of time too. So hopefully, for anyone who was listening, it was beneficial and helpful. And I would just like to say for me that thank you for suggesting this and putting this together, and hopefully some doctors found this valuable. So thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you, Nick. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.